Good morning, everyone. So, the fact that the camera's not working is actually kind of perfect for the talk that I was planning to give this morning. And what I'd like to do is start out with uh, Master Rinzai. He's one of my favorites. Uh, so this is Master Rinzai or Linji. Uh, all of you are probably pretty familiar with him. He was the one who spoke the line, "The true person of no rank," the topic that we did our last retreat on. So you can guess he's one of my favorites. So this is case 177 out of Entangling Vines collection. It's called Linji's Four Realms. Someone asked Master Linji, "What are the four realms of no form?" And the master said, "A thought of doubt in your mind, and you're obstructed by the element of earth. A thought of desire in your mind, and you drown in the element water. A thought of anger in your mind, and you're scorched by the element fire. A thought of joy in your mind, and you're blown about by the element wind. Understand this, however, and you will no longer be tossed about by circumstances. Instead, you will utilize them wherever you go. You can appear in the east and vanish in the west, appear in the south and vanish in the north, appear in the center and vanish at the border, appear at the border and vanish in the center. You can walk on the water as though it is land, and walk on the land as though it is water. Why can you do these things? Because you realize that the four elements are like dreams, like illusions." So one of the footnotes of this koan speaks about the different abilities that he talks about here. And it says that the abilities described in this paragraph, six earth shakings that represent the free working of the awakened person. They're mentioned in a number of sutras, such as the Mahaprajnaparamita Sutra, which describes the six earth shakings said to have occurred when the Buddha entered the samadhi of the joyful play of the lion, whatever samadhi that is. Uh, I'm sure you're all quite familiar with that samadhi. And it's also evidently from the Avatamsaka Sutra. So I thought this was apropos. It's not a topic that is probably unfamiliar to all of you. Some of the other teachers have spoken about this. I speak about it quite a bit in one form or another. But I just thought that the way Master Rinzai expressed not being attached to causes and conditions, I think is so important. In fact, I think it's key. Uh, it's key because the alternative is the blaming and complaining that we essentially do constantly. Um, Blaming and complaining, I don't mean we necessarily speak it constantly, but I feel that we think it constantly. I know that I do. We always want to know why it's as bad as it is, why things are, when bad things or negative things, and that is things that we regard as bad or negative occur, there's a there's an instant tendency to blame. Uh, One of the things that's been uh, sad but also interesting to observe is the aftermath of the wildfires out in LA. All the blaming that's starting to happen now. Actually, the blaming started while the fires were burning. And as I was thinking about it, I realized uh, there's so many conditions that come together so that something like that happens. Uh, there are people maybe that are involved. There's there needs to be something to burn, so there's plants involved. There's policies involved, there's politics involved. What it really gets down to is oxygen, though, because the one thing that humans and fires share in common is we both need oxygen to survive. So you could say, well, if there's no oxygen, it's the oxygen's fault that the fires burn up everything, which is true actually. But without it, we couldn't survive either. It's the oxygen's fault. Whose fault is it? Where does the fault lie? The fault lie in the creation of the universe, the creation of the earth. You know, if you keep going back, you realize that everything that we regard as misfortune, and it certainly feels like misfortune at the time they're being experienced. If you lose your home or a loved one or have a health emergency or a financial reversal or whatever, uh, if you trace it back far enough, what is the cause of it? And you realize it cannot be determined, it's indeterminate because you can keep going back and back and back. There's an infinite number of causes of why I'm sitting here right now able to speak with you. An infinite number, an incalculable number. So I always come back to, in times of difficulty, the Heart Sutra, because it talks about the reality of gain and loss. So we regard gain as positive and loss as negative. And what it says in the Heart Sutra is that they're essentially the same. They're both empty, is what it's saying. They're both empty of content. Gain is empty of content and loss is empty of content. Why does it not feel like that? Because we ascribe feelings to our gains and our losses and the gains and losses we see around us. Now, there's nothing wrong with feelings, by the way. I don't want to imply that there's something wrong with having a feeling about something. That's not at all what I'm saying. But it's our attachment to those feelings that causes suffering. That's just all there is to it. I wish it wasn't the case, but it is. I wish I could have all the feelings that I have and not suffer at all. I think we all do. We don't want things to change from something we regard as more positive to something that appears to be more negative. And I say appears because we don't know. We don't know what the end results of anything are. We do our best. You know, the precepts are designed to kind of do our best, not to cause suffering where we don't have to, even though we do it constantly, but not to the greatest degree we can become aware of it. And yet, we don't really know what the results of anything we do, say, or what happens around us will be. There's this wonderful line out of another of the sutras we chant, with the Shinshin Ming, or the sometimes called the identity of relative and absolute, or the translation we used is realizing unity. One of the most famous writings in Zen. When you walk the way, it is not near, it is not far. If you are deluded, it is mountains and rivers away from you. When you walk the way, it isn't near, it isn't far. Well, if it isn't near and it isn't far, then where is it? We know. If you've been practicing a while, even if you haven't been practicing a while, just logically speaking, it's right here. You can even figure this out with scientific logic. There is no past or future. There's only here. There's only now. And what we experience now is what we think happened before and what we're worried about happening in the future. And then occasionally we leave some space for, the taste of this tea or coffee is really wonderful. Can I just experience that regardless of who's president or what's happening somewhere else in the world? What was that? Or the camera doesn't work. Yeah. Yeah, Dave was doing a camera meditation for the first 20, 30 minutes. He's running from electrical connection to electrical connection. but the PhD in physics still couldn't solve the problem. That's all right. Sometimes it doesn't matter what our training is, we just can't do it. So what do? We just move forward. We walk the way that is presented in front of us. Camera works, we walk the camera working way. Camera doesn't work, we improvise. We walk a different way, but we just walk. We could get upset about it. Why isn't the camera working? I paid X number of dollars for it. I've spent untold hours, which, to be honest, Dave has. See, I can say this because I haven't done it. I spent untold hours working on this system. Why won't it work? So then we can get upset about that, and then we can transfer that suffering to others quite easily, perhaps. And then we've created a world of suffering. Then we start experiencing the world as being a world of suffering alone. Because I'm suffering, and guess what? Everyone around me is now too, because I'm not going to let them get away without suffering. Misery loves company, damn it. So, can we walk the way that's not near or far? Can we drink the tea and taste it? It seems so utterly simple, and it is utterly simple. Somehow, we need to train a lot in order to do this. But it's absurd on a certain level. And that's why a lot of the teachers express this. Rinzai was one of the best ones for expressing this. You know, he would berate the people listening to his talks every now and then, like, what are you all doing here? And he'd like chase them with a stick and scatter them out of the hall. Why are you listening to me? Why are you going outside of yourself? Why aren't you just walking the way? There isn't anything else. I couldn't even do that if I wanted to, because most of you aren't present. Well, I'll put it this way, your bodies aren't present here. Your images are. So this is something we can practice all the time. It's not just meditation. Meditation or zazen or whatever you want to call it is wonderful. It has its purpose. I think it's essential on a certain level to be that true person of no rank. I think it really gives us that mirror of the emptiness of things, the awakened nature of things, probably a better way of putting it. But we can practice the practice that I'm talking about every single moment we're aware of it. So we're only practicing it when we're aware we're practicing. Well, we actually are practicing it when we're not aware, but it doesn't seem like it. It only seems like it when we're aware. And what does it mean to be aware? Just experience what we're experiencing and let go of what needs to be let go of, which is everything that we're not experiencing in the moment. There's this tendency of the ego to feel that it needs to keep things going. It needs to remember all the slights and all the problems and everything. Otherwise, if I don't keep remembering it, then it'll disappear. Our life, ourself, the way we identify ourselves will disappear because we're so highly identified with all of the creations of the mind, of the ego. The more heavily identified we are with the creations of the ego, the more we suffer when those things are changed in some way, which, guess what? We all know this, they always do. Always. There is no exception to this. I'm fond of saying, even stainless steel rests in Florida, which anyone who owns a boat knows. So the even the things that we create to not degenerate, they degenerate eventually, no matter what. Rocks degenerate, the earth itself degenerates. So why wouldn't the metal things degenerate too? So it doesn't mean we don't do our best to preserve what we enjoy and preserve what we like. But as a Zen practitioner, when we can't anymore, for whatever the reason, a physical injury, a financial reversal, an illness, a death, a birth, a political change, a pandemic, then we need to practice with what's arising. You need to practice with what's in front of us. And the practice is the same no matter what appearances are appearing. And that's why I'm going to read this last part again, because I think it's masterfully put by Master Rinzai. Why can you do these things? He's talking about all these kind of magical things. They're not really magical things, but they appear to be magical things. He talks about appearing in the center and vanishing at the border. What does he mean by that? He means being free of the border or the center. And he says at the end, why can you do these things? Because you realize that the four elements are like dreams, like illusions. Now, what are the four elements? You know, they're all the constituents of life. They call them earth, air, fire, and water. So essentially everything on the planet, according to the ancient Taoist teachings, probably goes back even further than that, earth, air, fire, and water in one form or another. They appear and they disappear. Then they appear again in a different form and then they disappear. That's the history of the world. It's the history of the universe. It's the history of our lives. Things appear and then disappear. So this is the practice. This is where it's at. The meditation is a preparation for it, but it isn't solely it. We can do it even when we're not meditating, even when we're not meditating for days or weeks or months or years, you can still do it. The purpose of the meditation is it brings us back to this kind of center point of awake awareness. We can kind of use that as our reference. We can't really live in that state all the time as long as we have a human body, because we have needs to take care of for ourselves and others. Thank you, everyone.